I would like to ask Michael Guerin for his presentation. He's program manager at Smart Docklands. Do you hear me, Mr.
I can,
Guerin?
yes.
Yes. Thank you for joining us again, and I will ask you for a presentation.
Great. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see
There we
that.
are. Good stuff. Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Michael Guerin. I am the program manager for Smart Docklands, which is our smart city testbed in Dublin City in Ireland. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we set up this innovation district and smart city testbed in Dublin and the use of data within the district. So to kick off, and just so that we're all on the same page from the start, I'd like to recap on what a smart city is. So as you can see at the top there, real-time connected and data-driven, and what that means in reality is connecting many devices around the city so that we can understand movement and patterns and understand things a lot better, so that we can make better decisions. I'm going to explain that in some Dublin terms now. But before we get into that, I'd just like to give you some background on the project. So Smart Dublin is an initiative, is the umbrella initiative in Dublin City. It's an initiative of the 4 local authorities, the 4 municipalities. So we have Dublin City Council, which is where the Smart Docklands area is. We also have South Dublin County Council, Dunleary, Rathdown and Fingal. Within the Dublin region, we have a lot of smart city tech already. Some of you may recognize or be familiar with the big belly bins on the left-hand side. In the center, real-time passenger information to let you know when the next bus or train is coming. And then on the right-hand side, a bike sharing scheme and the Dublin Bikes, which is the second most popular bike sharing scheme in Europe, I believe. Each bike is used up to 8 times per day. On top of this, we now have a number of dockless bike sharing schemes and a recently launched e-bike scheme. And we also have one mode of payment or a contactless payment card, which you can pay across 8 modes of transport. But all of these things are great. Some cities have large smart city projects like this, but we wanted in Dublin to take a slightly different approach and get things in quicker, but also take a more agile approach and give us an opportunity to trial and test solutions before we roll them out to the city. So we decided to designate the Docklands area as our test bed. We feel that we're big enough yet small enough to be the ideal location to pilot new city services and solutions. So we set up Smart Docklands, which is Dublin's smart city testbed. You can see on the map here, for those of you who know Dublin or don't know Dublin, the brown area in the middle is the main tourist area and the main thoroughfares where the shopping areas are. On the area that's covered in blue here is what we call the Docklands area. So it's about 2.5 square kilometers. It's home to a number of large businesses such as Google, Facebook, etc. Some stats in the area: there's 44,000 people employed there and 26,000 residents. There's over 3 billion investment in the area between now and 2025, and it's home to over 500 businesses, some of which you will probably recognize. So you can see Google down the bottom left-hand side there. They employ 8,000 people in the Docklands. Facebook employ 5,000 people. Deloitte have their EMEA blockchain lab. Airbnb have their innovation hub, Accenture have their connected building there. So you can see there's a lot of innovation already happening in the area. But what we wanted to do with Smart Docklands is get all of these people talking, having conversations about what they could do specifically for the area surrounding their buildings. So we started the Smart Docklands network. It actually initiated as about 3 or 4 companies trying to understand what they could do around IoT specifically in the Docklands. It expanded to a wider network of businesses, some of which aren't actually based there, but would like to trial and test in the area. And it actually now encompasses 77 different companies. Some of them are tech companies, some of them are startups and SMEs, some of them are government agencies. We have international consulates that are involved, and a lot of transport authorities, type of thing. So it really covers the breadth of all things smart cities. The Smart Docklands network is much wider than that. So you can see the network I just referred to on the top left there, which is the Smart Docklands IoT network. We have 4 main stakeholder groups, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. So we have a physical infrastructure group, a tourism and hospitality group, property owners and developers, and then resident community groups. We work with a lot of startups and tech community. and the research, university research and academia. And then we have some connections with cities around the world through the Harvard Tech Initiative and the Harvard Tech City Innovators Forum, and originally the URBAC Smart Impact Forum. So Smart Docklands itself is 50% funded by Dublin City Council, which is the municipality, and 50% funded by Connect and Enable. Now, they are two Science Foundation Ireland research centres. One is focused on the future of networks and connectivity, and the next is focused on smart cities and smart communities. Smart Docklands itself is split into three different pillars. So we have connectivity being the first one, use cases being the second, and engagement being the third. So I'm going to go through each of these and give you some examples of what some of the projects that we have in Dublin. So the first one being connectivity. Because this project initiated as a connectivity test bed, what we wanted to do is have as many different types of connectivity in one area, see which type of connectivity is more suitable for each use case. So maybe LPWAN and LoRa is suitable, maybe 5G is more suitable, maybe Wi-Fi, but we wanted a real life test bed where we could trial and test this. So we have each of these types of connectivity in the Docklands, 3 different low-powered wide area networks, which is LPWAN, so LoRa, WAN, Sigfox, and NB-IoT with Vodafone. We have 3G and 4G cellular, and we have fiber, Wi-Fi, and 5G is our main project, main connectivity project at the minute. So we have a project with a company called Dense Air. In the summer of 2017, Dublin City Council became aware that their city assets would be required to deploy connectivity infrastructures. So that might be street lights, traffic lights, bus shelters, bins, etc. We wanted to know how we would use those assets, what should they be used for. So we put out what's called a PIN notice, a prior information notice, which is a market consultation to try and understand how you could utilize city assets for connectivity. We decided to embark on a project with a company called Dense Air, and Dense Air's proposition was to deploy as you can see at the bottom, a neutral host small cell 5G network. So I'm just going to explain briefly what that is. If we focus on small cells, first of all, small cells will be used in 5G because the range of data transmission for the 5G spectrum is much smaller. So if you can see the macro cell in the top left there, they have a range of about 30 up to 30 kilometers potentially. With 5G small cells, it might only be 50 to 500 meters. And because of this, we will need to use streetlights, utility poles, traffic poles, and smart bins. So this is what we have done in the Docklands, specifically at the minute on traffic lights and street lights. We are also exploring smart bins at the minute as well. And then in terms of the neutral host aspect that I mentioned, there's different models that you can use within small cell deployments. So some that we've seen in cities is an exclusive concession, which means one operator gets access to all of the city assets. And that obviously limits access to others, and it doesn't exactly encourage competition. There's another alternative called shared infrastructure, where you can have multiple providers on assets. So that leads to a number of different pieces of equipment needing to be installed on assets. There's an aesthetic concern there, and there's also a concern in terms of structural integrity of assets about how many boxes you can really put on these things without them cracking or breaking. And the last and more appealing one we feel is neutral host. So this is where you put one physical installation on a pole, and this can propagate the signal of all the operators. So what we would like to do is explore this type of equipment in Dublin, which is why we embarked on the project with Dense Air. So these are just some photos of the small cells deployed. You can see the round one just on the left-hand side here, and on the right-hand side, you can see it here just from below. So we've deployed 20 of these outdoors. We've also deployed some small cells indoors. They just look like a large alarm clock. This project has been ongoing for 2 years now. It was the first outdoor 5G testbed in Ireland. Certainly one of the first in the world to deploy a 5G neutral host testbed. And as part of this, we decided to write a discussion paper working with some other local authorities in Ireland, and also some government departments to look at 5G and the future of connectivity. This document will be made available in the next couple of weeks, but just to give you some idea of what's contained in there, we looked at 5G in Ireland, what the role of local authorities would be, and I think that kind of applies to local authorities and municipalities around the world. the deployment architectures, deployment models, how also addressed the health concerns around 5G, and then made some recommendations to our national government. And at the end of it, you can see there we've plotted out what a 5G journey might look like in Ireland from 2017 through to 2024. We feel that if Ireland wants to continue to being a leader in technology and innovation, fast tracking the suggested actions in the report is our suggestion. So just moving on to the use cases and projects then. So this map is a map of the Docklands. It gives you an idea of the types of things we have there. So I've just mentioned the 5G indoor and outdoor. We also have cyclist prioritization, bike lights, flood prediction, etc. So I'm just going to go through some of these in some more detail. The first one is flood prediction. So we have a number of flooding sensors deployed around Dublin. Some of them are river level, some of them are rainfall. The use of data in this project, I suppose, and looking at a different model than what had been done before. Traditionally, if you wanted to measure how much rainfall, if you think about 60 or 100 years ago, how much rainfall there'd been in an area, you might put out a bucket and see at the end of the day how much rainfall there had been. In the last 20 years, you could potentially do it via SIM card connectivity, where you could see how much water is filling up a bucket. This is if you wanted a range of sensors across Dublin or across any city. If you have a SIM card connected to something, it uses a lot of battery power, which means you have to have it connected to mains power, which is what you can see in the right-hand side there, all the cables connecting into a plug somewhere. What we have decided to deploy in Dublin is low-cost, low-power rainfall sensors. So these sensors you can see on the left-hand side are battery-powered. They can be deployed for 2, 3, 4 years on one battery. So, they're also extremely cheap, and the connectivity is very cheap. So we were able to deploy a dense network of them around the Dublin region. So we have 96 sensors deployed, rainfall, river level, and weather stations, with multiple partners across Dublin, some of them through a Horizon 2020 project called Operandum with University College Dublin, and some with SoftBank. And the data sets for these are now all openly available on our open data platform called Dublinked. So if you go to Dublinked and search flooding, you'll be able to get access to these 96 sensors. Some of the data dates as far back as 2003. So it's quite an interesting data set there. This is just a map zoomed in of Dublin to show you some of the locations of the weather stations and rainfall stations. We also are using data to try and address this problem. So this is a common sight in a lot of cities, on-street flooding. It often happens because, as you can see on the right-hand side there, drains get blocked with leaves and rubbish. For any local authority or municipality to understand how these are, which drains are blocked at any given time can be quite challenging. In Dublin, we have 55,000 of these. So for us to know which ones are blocked would be obviously very difficult. So we worked with a company called Denalto, who are an Irish company, to develop a low-powered, low-cost sensor which goes in the drain. You can see it on the right-hand side there. The idea here is that we want to understand which drains are blocked in advance, so that we can clear them in advance of a large rainfall event. So if we know there's going to be a lot of rainfall in the next 2 to 3 days, we can see that these 50 drains are blocked in high-risk areas. We can go and clear them in advance, and then it reduces on-street flooding, and then it reduces the cost of damage. So this has been a very interesting proposition. Denalto developed the sensors in-house with the Dublin City Council engineers over a 2-year period, and I believe they've now deployed these sensors across several countries across Europe. Again, this is so traditionally the way we would have had to deal with that is, whenever there is flooding on a street, we would have relied on the citizens or public to call in and tell us that there's flooding. Now we can have these multiple sensors across the city feeding us real-time data back, and then we can make much better decisions and much quicker decisions. We've also deployed a number of air quality sensors in Dublin through a Horizon 2020 project called iScape. Again, in most cities, there's concerns about air pollution and air quality. So we were able to a number of them just feed the data quality, or what the air belly bins, which I mentioned earlier. Those of you who don't know big belly bins, they are a smart bin, and they have a solar panel on the roof of them. They use the energy that's generated from the solar panel to compress the rubbish. You can fit 5 times as much rubbish in the bin, which obviously reduces the number of waste collection trucks required. But on top of that, they have sensors in the bin to let you know the bin is full. So this is a screenshot of the platform that our waste management team have. They can see each of those red pins is a bin that is up to 80% at capacity and needs to be emptied. So the reason we're using this in Dublin, we've replaced 100 bins with 110 smart bins, and we've reduced waste collection in Dublin, in this area of Dublin, by 87%. So the use of data here, I suppose, is how it is the real-time feed of which bins actually need emptied. So the way we traditionally did this was we went round each bin 2 to 3 times per day. Now we only need to go to the bins that are actually full. So we're saving a lot of fuel costs, a lot of man hours, obviously, and a lot of time, and making things much more efficient to empty these bins. Another item that we have deployed in Dublin is a smart bike light. So you can see the bike light at the top right-hand side there. It's developed by a company called C. This bike light is smart in the sense that it can detect road surface quality, bad road surface quality. Cyclists, that's potentially a valuable data set. We have that for hundreds of cyclists now in Dublin that have all opted into this trial. So initially it was 500, we added another 200, and we're adding more cyclists now. So with that data set of hundreds of cyclists, we can start to understand the most cycled routes in Dublin. Where are the popular routes for cyclists? Where are the routes that are not going? We can also detect where there's been most accidents for these cyclists, where they've fallen off their bikes the most, and also the road surface quality. So on the left-hand side here, with all the blue dots on it, that's where bad road surface quality has been detected. It's actually just outside a construction site, and it is pretty bad around there. So we use this data to feed back to city planners, and then they can improve cycling infrastructure for the cyclists in the city. Another problem that we're trying to address is ring buoy theft. So this is a common sight in most cities with waterways. We have around 30 to 35 of these ring buoys stolen every week in Dublin, at a cost of €20,000 to Dublin City Council just to replace the ring buoys. On top of that, the staff to go around and check it. So the staff go around and check it once or twice per week. They write down what's missing for a couple of weeks at a time. So we're just about to put out a tender and using an innovative procurement method to try and test multiple IoT solutions to this problem. So if we know ring buoys have been taken, we can replace them much quicker, and how can we also use IoT to reduce the number that are taken, with some interesting solutions coming through on that. And another thing that we're working on in the Docklands is trying to understand the space used within buildings. So this initially was with a company called ARM, Dogpatch Labs, which is a co-working space and the startup accelerator in Dublin. They wanted to understand which of their desks and seats are being used and for how long each day. You can see down the bottom there the peak times for usage. You can also see the red rings of where essentially which seats are more popular. They wanted to go a step further. I've been able to refine this now to see exactly on each seat whether there's somebody in it or not. So this is all using image processing. It's all processed on the edge. The idea here is that it's privacy by design, and it's not capturing any images. So the only thing that actually gets transmitted back is a JSON file to say there's somebody in the seat or not in the seat. The reason this could be used, and the reason this was initially used, was to try and understand the utilization of seats in a co-working space. This has now been expanded to galleries in Dublin City Council's area, and will hopefully be used now as part of a COVID response to try and understand whether people are social distancing within the galleries. And the last project I'm going to talk about is a 3D modeling project. So this, for those of you who don't know Dublin, looks like a nice aerial image of Dublin. These buildings are actually 3D models. So some of them have actually been built. At the time of the photo, they weren't built. But the reason I show you this, we decided to partner with a 3D modeling company about 2 years ago to develop a 3D model of the Docklands. This is just some visuals of the model. So you can see the real image on the right-hand side of what the convention centre of Dublin looks like, and the 3D model on the left-hand side. So it's a very accurate model. Dublin City Council have open sourced this for anyone to use. It's being used for all kinds of very interesting use cases. Some of it is telecoms planning, some of it is energy modeling, some of it is zombie games. So quite a range. And it's also being used by the City Council themselves in a virtual reality environment to try and inform planning decisions. So this is a new bridge that's proposed in Dublin, and in advance of building the bridge, Dublin City Council are using virtual reality in consultation with citizens to see how they feel about the cycleways and the walkways, and some of the plans have actually been adapted by the planners based on how they felt when they put on the virtual reality glasses. And we also open sourced the model around this time last year, actually, at a 3D hackathon with a number of our partners. Two of the winners of that were a company called Place Engage. So they've developed an augmented reality tool where you can place the plans of a new building into an app, and you can stand anywhere in the district and see what the new building will look like. And also Dublin Fire Brigade that's using it to map where alarm panels, hydrants, and risers are in the area, and they can better plan a response before they turn up to a location. So I'm just going to finish on engagement. So we have two sides to engagement with communities and engagement with the market. So engagement with communities to kick off. I suppose we identified that we were doing a lot with the tech and startup community at the start, and a lot with universities and research centres, but not enough with business owners and community groups and residents. So we decided to identify the four main stakeholder groups in the Docklands. One is those who look after physical infrastructure, so roadways, waterways, traffic lights, etc. Another significant group is hospitality and tourism. So we have our large convention centre, which I just showed you, our largest indoor concert arena, the 3 Arena, quite a number of hotels, a digital museum. So a lot of attractions in the Docklands area. Residents groups, we work with 6 different residents groups in the Docklands, 3 in the North Docks and 3 in the South Docks. And then property owners and developers. The area is a strategic development zone for Dublin City Council. So we are essentially, because there's so much development going on, there's a massive opportunity to work with these developers to try and understand how IoT and different applications might improve the area around their buildings and how they manage their buildings. So they have engaged in the 3D modeling project and a number of energy modeling projects with us as well. So this is just some of the photos of the workshops that we have run. We've run 16 workshops to date with just over 260 attendees and facilitated by Deloitte, Accenture, and the Fjord team within Accenture. Within those workshops, it was a 2-hour workshop each time. The idea was we would explain smart cities, explain what the bikes mean, what the bins mean, and how they're improving the lives of citizens. We then asked people what problems do they face in the Docklands. We didn't want to keep it to problems that could just be addressed by technology. We wanted any problems that they were aware of. So we've been given a list of over 350 challenges, which we're now trying to address. We've broken them down into 11 main themes, which you can see on the left-hand side there. So moving the flows, environmental, extreme weather, sustainable mobility, etc. A lot of common themes, I would imagine, with most cities across the world. But going back to what I said at the start, we want to make sure that everything we do is data-driven. So that's not just data-driven in terms of decisions on how to address things. We also want to try and understand whether the problem exists. So whenever a company comes to us with a solution, we want to make sure that the problem actually exists in the Docklands or in Dublin. There's no point in just deploying technology just because it's cool or sexy technology. We want to make sure that it's actually required in Dublin. So we use this as a way of doing that. Some of the other engagement that we've had recently, one was with a school in the Docklands, trying to show them a problem-solving approach using design thinking technologies. It was called Rings End College. We did this via Zoom. It was all mid-COVID-19. It was supposed to be in person, but we did it via Zoom. Basically, it was a 3-week program. The first one was identifying problems and challenges with them. The second one was how to define a problem. And then the third one was how to develop a solution and test that solution. So that's just a picture of or a screenshot of the Zoom call. And on the bottom left, that was actually what one of the kids came back with. So they came back with a IoT-based sensor solution to the ring buoy problem, which we had highlighted to them. So very interesting to see their feedback. And the next step for that is we're setting up a thing called the Academy of the Near Future, which is a smart city tech program for upskillers and students. This will be, the idea is to demystify IoT and smart cities for people. So the 2 main groups that we're focusing on is local authority and municipality staff, those who are procuring new solutions, those who might, engineers that might manage waste and roadways and waterways. We want to get them to know how easy IoT is, how cheap it is, and how they could start to use IoT solutions for their problems. And again, how they could generate data to make better decisions. And then also for students. So there's an idea here that we want to make them aware of how their cities work and how they can improve their cities, and it might encourage them to get involved in the future. And this was one of the pictures of, or some pictures from a previous workshop that we ran with local authority staff to show them how this might work. This is also a Smart Dublin Trello board. If anybody's interested on the wide range of projects that we have in Dublin, you can go on this. If you Google Smart Dublin Trello, you'll be able to find out information about over 50 of our projects across the Smart Dublin initiative. Engagement with the market, I'll just mention to finish now. So the first one we have is called an SBIR, which is Small Business Innovation Research. It's a pre-procurement model where we work with companies and give them some funding, and the investment agency in Ireland, Invest in our Enterprise Ireland, will support these companies to give them some funding to prototype and develop solutions. So we've looked at things like cycling, wayfinding, flooding. So the gully sensors that I mentioned earlier, the bike light that I mentioned earlier, they all came through this project, and then we've tested them in Dublin. And as you can see there, we funded 42 startups, just over 1.5 million. We also use direct challenges, things like a Smart Cycle Tech Challenge as part of Velo City. So we're testing 3 of these solutions in Dublin now. And the impact of all of this, we're working, because we have quite a heavy involvement with universities and with the universities in Dublin. We were part of a research paper on how universities are shaping smart cities. We also run a number of events in Dublin. So 2 significant ones recently was the Harvard Tech 5G Accelerator. That was to look at 5G from a city's perspective. There was people from 30 cities across the world here to discuss what 5G might mean for them and how it might impact them. And we also met the Dutch royal family recently, who were in Dogpatch Labs, the area I showed you earlier. And some of the awards that we won based on this. So we were a finalist at the World Smart City Awards. We were listed #1 for strategy and smart locations of the future. We were a winner at the World Small Cell Awards, and we took part in the Reuters Global Thought Leader Series. And where this has all gone in Dublin. So Smart Dublin, as I mentioned earlier, is the umbrella initiative. Smart Docklands was the first idea that we had to set up a smart district. That's been quite successful for us. We've now launched Smart Sandyford, which is an out-of-town district. It used to be an industrial estate. Now it's more of a business district. We've launched Smart DCU, which is a university campus. Smart Crow Park will hopefully be our next, and that's a smart stadium. And we're looking at 2 other areas that we could have these fast-track innovation districts across the Dublin region. And that's just a picture again of some of the solutions that we've deployed. So I hope that made sense for everyone. And if anyone has any questions at all, I'd be happy to answer them. And if anybody wants to find out more, they can find us at smartdocklands.ie or at smartdocklands on Twitter. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, full of interesting case studies. Please stay with us until the discussion.